be under our code of ordinance as well, rather than in the UDO.
Code of ordinances, UDO, no keeping on a permanent basis of chickens and goats and other types of farm animals. The past reading or writing was clear as to a paragraph on all of the different items that were not allowed to keep on your property inside the county property.
What is our process in terms of making that addition under the UDO?
I think, can you hear me? I think first we would want to at least, my opinion, address this to the planning board, for the planning board to make a recommendation. And then take that recommendation to the town council.
Motion's on the floor, receive a second. Other questions or comments?
I feel that is appropriate, as Paul and Bryant said, you know, you have the concern of at least allowing on a temporary basis goats of a valid use to clear under vegetation. So, you know, I think by allowing that and just allowing the other, the permanent keeping of livestock, farm animals and such is appropriate. We're a growing town. I know, you know, 30 years ago, perhaps it was more, more appropriate to allow people to keep a certain amount of animals in town, but as we grow, it's becoming a little less tenable to do that, and so I certainly feel that revising your proposal from staff to go through P&Z and to us for the temporary allowance of goats for certain uses with the special use permit is appropriate, and the other continue to be disallowed.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? And none, motion passes. We will remove item 2 from the agenda with the direction that staff will direct the planning board to address the use of goats with a special use permit. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay. I'll call for the motion to adopt the agenda. Is there a second motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion is made to adopt the agenda with the amended item. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is made, receive a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is general business. And I'll open it up for council, any items they want to discuss. I'll start with Mr. Harris.
Well, I had a couple of calls of, anyway, I want to applaud Tina for the effort with the, or the chief here, with the effort of the National Night Out, the way you had to do it. The only two things I had a call about was that where it was advertised in the whistle stop, is that recognize the whistle stop's never out on the 1st of October, or 1st of the month, it's 4 or 5 days later. And so putting the ad in, and they saw it today, and it was already ahead last Saturday.
We also put it on.
It was in the paper. And that's what I told them. I said,
our Facebook page also.
but I told them that was in the paper there. So yeah, they were like, well, that was one that you don't ever expect that thing to ever be out by the 1st of the month. And that's all, their only comment was, if you use that, just recognize we don't see it that early. And then, and the other one was, and this is one that they, the complaint I received was that the police officers were interacting with people out here and nobody had face masks on. Even though we were outside, they were concerned that we didn't have face masks. And I said, well, I'll just bring it up to you. And then the other thing that they mentioned, and since I don't really look at that all the time, I didn't know, but in the Iredell Free News, they have detailed police reports for Statesville, Mooresville, and the county, but Troutman never has one in there. And they're wondering why do we not have it.
Hadn't thought about sending submitting it and it's not been requested, so. But that's something that she'd like to.
I know that, well, that would be with Mike, but I know that, we have published things that are sent, like if there's an arrest made in Troutman, that's the significance that y'all sent press releases. I know that previous police chief did that and we published them. You know, there was like, I remember one from Lowe's where somebody was stealing things at Lowe's and they nabbed them, you know, stuff like that. So, I mean, but Mike would be glad to print anything you send him.
And since I haven't looked at the others in detail, I really can't say I knew what was in them, but, and that was asked, I said, it's in there, but any one of the other three, you see it, but not ours. And I said, are we not doing anything, or are we just not getting published? I said, I can't answer that question, because I don't really know for sure exactly what she was talking about.
Troutman just safety freeze out.
Okay, and it could be, that's what I told her, I said, yeah, I said, I'll bring it up, that's all I can do is ask, and, that was it.
Okay, I would like to thank Emily and Paxton for what you had put out in the weekly update, that you're gonna update and do some work on the depot. It has been neglected for a few years, and it was a loving effort by Adam's grandfather and Wayne Rogers too, and that was all built with, what's that phrase that Jan used? In kind, where it was all done, and with their, all the people that had some type of responsibility to it and putting the plaque up. So I thank you both for doing that. Adam, I took a little cruise down Brook Street.
Mm-hmm.
I'd taken a picture of how bad one area looked,
Mhm.
and it looked so much better.
Okay.
So much. It was the house on the corner of Church and Brook Street,
Mhm.
there on the curb where it really looked terrible, but that looks nicer now.
Okay,
Thank you.
the storm drain?
Yeah, well, not just the storm drain, but all along the curbing
Oh,
where
okay.
they had dead grass clippings and stuff.
Gotcha,
And they
okay.
accumulated, but it looks nice, thanks.
Good deal.
And thanks for spraying the streets too.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, a couple questions for our chief. I noticed in, I think it was October 15th, maybe not the 15th, and maybe not the 5th, no, never mind. It was on the week before that. Week ago Friday's weekly update, you had the Iredell County Sheriff's Department K-9 assisted. We have a K-9 wanted, we need their assistance.
Because ours has not been completely certified, he is doing that today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. So
Okay.
effective Wednesday, he'll be able to actually be called out and used in that respect.
Okay, was there a problem, I mean, a delay because he wasn't certified yet, or is that a long type of endurance thing that
It
takes
is,
place?
it is a long drawn out process, and in addition to the fact that we have to do training on the master trainer's schedule. So we were
okay.
kind of at the mercy of his schedule.
All right. And then, I'm sure you're aware of that we had a major catastrophe all day long containing with Highway 21. And I don't know why, but that light pole in that ditch must have a magnet in it, because every time somebody runs in that ditch, they get that light pole and they have to put a new one up every time. I made that comment the minute I backed out of the driveway to my husband. They always do that. Why so many? But it was a nightmare for 8+ hours, especially when they completely blocked 21 off. And we didn't have any officers out there directing any traffic or anything.
At the crash site, there was no officers?
Once the car got moved and they started the utility work and everything, there were no officers directing the traffic. When I left about 12:35 to go on Old Mountain Road, there was a fireman at the intersection of Old Mountain Road and Highway 21 directing traffic. And then when I came back at 4 o'clock, there were just cones across the road with a sign saying road closed. And everybody was going north and south on Eastway. So it was a nightmare it was nice to get in my driveway. But then when I wanted to get back out, I had to sit till mercy of somebody. Now, I know a policeman wouldn't have done any difference, but could a policeman not been at the end of Eastway because people were stopping at that stop sign since the highway, was closed down. I just felt like there was no police presence. And once the crash site, the initial car and ticketing and whatever got taken care of.
Well, and, we only have 2 officers working at a time. We could have had somebody out there. That was not brought to my attention, but I can check into it and make sure that they understand that if there's a major issue, then it needs to be addressed. If the flow of traffic is going, we typically will clear to be available for other calls.
Well, yeah, I realized there were only 2 on call, but I just felt like maybe someone part-time or something could have come in and helped out.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have, in my eyes, it could have easily caused another accident.
Mm-hmm. And we can address that, and that is something that we could look into. Right now, if you call a part-timer in, it could, if they're available, it could take up to an hour or 2 before we can even get them in here. And, by that time, that could be cleared up. So, it's kind of a unsure, time-sensitive type situation, and we would just have to do it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Well, I know the wreck happened before 10,
Mm-hmm.
but pretty much right around 10, and Highway 21 wasn't clear till after 5 o'clock
Is
yesterday.
it because they're replacing the pole? Is that, okay. All right. But yeah, we can address that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
That's it.
Just a comment to Councilman Williams. Couldn't we have also asked for some help from the Ardell County sheriffs?
If they have someone who's available, we
Did
could.
we reach out to them to ask them for their assistance?
Sure, I mean.
No, did we?
Oh, that I don't believe so.
How come?
I can't answer that. I actually was not aware that it was blocked off for that long a period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
My off-site observer today reports that the streaming audio and visual is perfect. Thanks to all of those that have spent months trying to get us to where we are right now. Mr. Grusbeck, I think you pushed it over the finish line along with the assistance of many others, and if it's being reported as perfect, then it must be. So thank you very much for that.
I don't know what Paxton's actual job duty says, but I know one of them is to supposedly they can look at volunteers, so we'll see how that works out. So I'll let you know when we have.
Okay. Report back.
Yeah.
And second, I had the opportunity to spend a few minutes on Saturday morning at the National Morning / Afternoon Day Out, Night Out. It was well set up, and it was nice to see the activity in front of our town hall and the police lights going. And how many officers are actually in attendance, like yourself?
We have about 12 officers.
12 officers,
Counting.
staggered over time. Yeah.
They were here the entire time.
Oh, the entire time, all 12 officers, great. So it was good to see it going. I was pleased to be able to spend 30 minutes with everyone. And the only comment that I would make beyond it was very nice was that I was the only one there with face mask on. So to Mr. Harris's point.
My family wore face masks too.
We actually had a
Yeah,
couple
mine
officers that had on face masks a little later on into the process, but I have not made face masks mandatory for my officers for officer safety reasons. So they're conditioned for that.
So those are my comments for this time. Thank you very much.
I think each comment I agree. I don't think I heard anything I disagree with, and to follow the salary. I think the staff, I won't enumerate in detail, but I appreciate all the staff's activities. They continue to amaze me. And we're a small town, and we have a small staff, but they do big town work in a big town way and with class. And very appreciative of each and every one of them. I also want to reiterate George's comment that I would like to see you get with Debbie and work out something with a report.
Absolutely.
Out of sight, out of mind. I'd like our police department to be in sight and in mind of our citizens all over Iredell County, not just Troutman. I'd like to see that come to fruition. And the comment on the masks. I realize that I'm not a fan of the mask. I think everybody knows that, but do what I got to do. So our police officers, when they're not on official out, I guess you could say, dealing with the public in a more formal way, if they could be cognizant and wear masks and so forth. I heard a report of some very close contact between officers and the public, which under any other circumstance would be a good thing. But when you're talking to COVID, even our president now, and many of the people in upper levels are suffering, I think the nation is very cognizant that this is a real thing, a dangerous thing, and all of us need to set the example that when we're in close contact, to definitely have the mask and, if possible, keep social distancing. But I certainly don't want them to jeopardize anything in the performance of their duties wearing a mask, and I understand that that may not be the appropriate thing there, but otherwise, perhaps be cognizant, let the public see them in more informal ways, such as Saturday, wearing a mask, setting the example. As Paul mentioned, the parking lot was full of people without masks. I'd hate to hear of even just contact tracing one person, pick it up our event here on Saturdays. I just want to reiterate that, and we'll move on. If there's nothing else, then the mayor had to step away temporarily, asked me to take over, so we'll move on. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I got something. I'd like to thank Emily and Adam and their staffs for doing a great job in getting the lights up, the solar lights. They look fabulous. Thank you.
That was all Emily.
That was all Paxton.
Well, thank you, Paxton.
Good job.
It looks wonderful. It makes our town look even better.
And the benches.
So,
And the benches sitting.
I'm gonna give you a report when we come around to staff, and I've got some pictures for us too, so.
Yeah, and that's part of what I was saying, we do things in a classy, big town way, and, Rose and I were driving through town, I guess for Saturday, and, she was commenting on being a lifelong resident. She doesn't normally comment on downtown because she's seen it all different types of ways over the years, and, she was very, very complimentary of how it looked,
Good.
and potted plants included and so forth, and
Good.
very complimentary. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, if there's nothing else, we'll move on. Updating of regarding town events, and I believe that's where you come in, Emily.
Were we gonna skip number one?
I'm sorry, I apologize for
No, that's
interrupting. COVID-19 expenditures and revenue update. I apologize, Emily, if we could have that first, then we'll get to you next.
Thank you, Mr. Henkel. Is this too loud? I don't know if people can hear me too loud. It's still okay for you. Yeah, as I indicated in my notes, the last summer council had asked our finance director, Mr. Stephen Shealy, to provide some revenue comparisons between the current year and 2019, and make an attempt to track any shortfalls we had during COVID. I think we've got a table of revenue comparisons in two different spots, one in my notes and then the other, I think maybe under a separate agenda briefing item. So you can see that things are reasonably close. We may be down. We may be down slightly in a couple of areas. Mr. Shealy has any comments or observations that you'd like to make on that?
Well, as you can see, we're up in some areas, down in others, but that's
fairly typical. Water billing does depend on the day of the month that they read, whether this, it could be a month with 28 or 29 days between billing cycle or reading cycles. Some months may be slightly over. But overall, we're up in most areas. Since I sent this out, when I sent it out, I didn't have the property tax receipts yet, and we got those it's really for September, but we're getting in October. For this year, we received $229,820 as opposed to last year's when we received $137,639. So folks seem to be paying their property tax early, and that's a good thing for cash flow. On our COVID expenditures, we've spent $31,000, a little over, of our 66 that we're allotted. I've not billed for the current month, past month's expenditures yet. The main difference being that we've made the down payment on the new system, and I'm very excited to hear that it's working well, so hopefully that's money well spent. But that's about all I've got, unless you have specific questions.
One comment that I read yesterday, and I'm sure all of you got the same information, is that the Powell bill may not come up to the same level that we've seen in previous years, even though the state had committed to putting additional dollars to Powell bill statewide because of the shortfall in revenue, specifically gas tax. They're holding back on the Powell bill, and we could see up to 10% less,
well,
I believe is the number that they quoted.
They said on average statewide 10% less. I calculated what we're going to be down about 3.4%.
3%. Okay,
and we're going to be
showing up down $1,000, but
yeah,
now
and we get two payments, so for the year we'll be down $2,000 under what we budgeted. So I mean, it is what it is. That's a state allotment.
The numbers look great. Last month, I think we all reacted very positively to how fortunate we are and how great the numbers look.
I will also point out, I forgot about this, on the water billing, the people who had arrangements. We have 34 that are making payments. We have 3 that have moved away. Those will be turned over to debt collection. And then 3 more that we've had no contact from. They're all been locked, but everyone else is either making payments or has paid off their balance.
The comment or point that I was hoping to make to everyone, had the opportunity to listen to one of the county commissioners speak late last week, and he was very cautionary, stating that while the county numbers are looking reasonable, if there is a resurgence, the numbers could go south really quick, and we should hold on to our positive budget position in anticipation of a slowdown, rather than go and overspend and come up short during this fiscal year. So that was his comment to
Certainly
the public, and I think that we need to keep that in mind as well. I'm sure that you are, sir.
If I could make one more comment too about the COVID CARES funding. As Mr. Shealy indicated, we do have a balance on that right now. We have until December to spend that. And I think eligible expenses, we could come close to spending our entire allotment if we made some additional improvements, some additional audio-visual improvements to the room, replacing kind of an older projector, for example, replacing some mics, I think, that have been recommended that we probably retire and replace with new ones. But I think all of that would be based on what kind of quotes we get on replacing that equipment. But we do have some time to spend that yet. It would be my intention, given some of the concerns that Commissioner Bryant just mentioned, that we use that as much as possible before we go into our budgeted amounts, or certainly any fund balance that we would have. So that's all I had.
These COVID funds are there to be used.
Yeah, exactly, so.
Well, there's still an active discussion going on in DC, for a second stimulus bill. There is a little disagreement, but there's also agreement. So I still continue to hold out hope that we may see some more funds, especially for small businesses and so forth, as well as municipalities and states and municipalities in that second stimulus bill that has yet to be passed on. But I'm hoping, and I realize things may slow down a little bit in that discussion because of current conditions and with COVID in DC, but hopefully that will continue behind the scenes and something will be done between now and election time to help us there. Also on sales tax in regard to that, the saving grace there is that we now, collect online sales tax very actively in this state, whereas a few years ago we did not. So people may not be going to the store, brick and mortar store, but they're going to a store online. We get sales tax from there, so thank goodness that we've got that as a backup. When I look at this, especially I look at the utility, and I'm very heartened to see. I'm a little surprised, July and August was even up. September, had to drop down to 93. And I hope that's not a pattern come October. Well, end of October.
I think possible, some of it may have to do with, we had a fairly wet month, so not many people were watering yards and so forth. Think of past years in July and August and September, things were pretty dry.
Yeah.
It's been pretty wet and there's not the need for irrigation and that sort of thing. The schools not playing football and not watering their fields and just several factors, but it could also be a factor of the number of days of the billing cycle. So I think looking at a longer term trend will be more helpful than looking month by month.
Is there any other comments? We ready to move on then to the next item? All righty, I apologize for getting out of order there. Since we were talking about hens and goats, I just naturally went to 30 instead of going back to 1, so I apologize. Emily, I will promise you I won't interrupt you this time.
I hope you will. I want some, a little bit of feedback and some open discussion around the remaining events for 2020. So the sheet was laid out at your places here when you came in, but there's just a running list of what we have left for 2020, and we all know that we can have our plans in place and they can change on a dime with the way everything looks with COVID right now. So, and that's pretty much what this list looks like, just a moving document, but we can just work down it, and then if you have feedback or any suggestions, please share them. We can start through the top. The Wicked Fast 5K, I didn't see a safe way that we could gather over 200 and some people. That race is typically one of our most well-attended races, so that one we hosted virtually, so that one we're not going to have in person. Trails and Treats, I shared with you in an email our plans for that one. It's a pretty intricate plan, but I feel like that with it being a holiday, and for some families, this is their tradition that they do in our community. This is what they do for their tradition, for their family. And so I feel like if we work together and if we work as a team and everyone kind of owns their job, that I think we can do it and we can do it well. Other communities have reached out to us and asked what our plans are and how we plan to execute them. And in sharing those details with them, it's kind of inspired them to try to do the same. So I feel like that we can work together to make this a safe event, and as I've shared with the vendors, if they will put the safety precautions into place, wear their masks, wear their gloves, only serve prepackaged items, keep the line moving, and like we said, just keep it a fluid moving line so that there is no congregating, having multiple parking options so that there's not hundreds of people in one parking lot. I feel like we can host it in a safe place, and if at any time any of us feel like we can't do it safely, then we can certainly back up and change our minds. So that's something that I want us to be open with each other about. So we can at this point plan to have it and plan to go forward the way that we've talked about in that email and the way that we've communicated on the event page on Facebook. But if the climate of the COVID-19 changes, then we've certainly can back up. Holiday Market Craft Show, canceled that. Didn't feel like we were able to host that safely. There's over 100 vendors indoors that in years past we had it at the fairgrounds. Then when that storm came through and it knocked all the buildings down, we then moved it to Cats. But that's too many people indoors for us to host that safely. So felt like we needed to cancel that for this year, and we'll pick it up next year. Our Christmas parade, we are accepting applications for that, and we are making plans to go forward with that. In talking with Chuck, and he wanted to be here with us today. He had to be at the school board meeting early, but he had made plans to be here today. But in talking with Chuck, we've talked about we can offer a waiver to the participants, releasing the town from any liability. We've talked about requiring the participants to wear masks. We've talked about encouraging, as we line them up in the Cats parking lot, encouraging them to spread out further than what we have in the past. So there's many protocol that we can take that we have not taken in the past, but this is something that we have gone ahead and started receiving applications for, and we can talk about those parameters as we go. But if we waited to see how things were looking down the road, it may be too late to start accepting applications. So we are receiving those, and we have put some verbiage in the advertisement and in the application that if at any time we feel like that things are unsafe, that we may need to cancel the event. So
What's your target date for that, the 5th?
it's, the first Saturday in December. But also think about for yourselves, you know, in the past we've done the horse-drawn carriage for you all, we've done separate vehicles, so this year we may need to go with the separate vehicle thing. So, but also maybe encouraging the bystanders to police their own social distancing and those kind of things. So I think we can safely hold the Christmas parade. We can always do a reverse parade where we line the entrance, how am I saying that? The participants line them up and then let people drive through. So we can back it up and do it differently. So there, we have options, but I feel like the Christmas parade is something that I think we can do it safely. But again, I solicit your feedback on that. Jingle Run 5K, I think in the next month or so we can continue to gauge things. I just need 30 days to advertise that and plan that, so we can cancel or proceed with that. But like I say, we'll gauge within the next month or so. New Year's fireworks. That is something we talked about earlier in the year at budget planning time. We did receive the contract from our fireworks provider this past week. He's good to go. The only question would be confirming with Iredell County that we have parking availability at the fairgrounds. So just need to confirm that with them, and then need to confirm that we feel that it's a safe event to have. And so that will be a sticky timeline in there of when we pay for our fireworks and when we go get our fireworks permit, and do we feel safe about it. So when we get to that timeline, then I'll need your definite feedback there. But I think that, again, people can stay in their vehicles and can distance themselves from others. I think that that is something that people can take ownership of themselves. So, and we can offer, I spoke with Michelle from Iredell County today, and she felt like that they would be able to offer us some of their parking lot for folks to come there and watch fireworks. So maybe this year, instead of just saying, hey, come to Iredell County Fairgrounds and watch the fireworks, maybe we can say we're offering multiple options for you to come to these places to watch the fireworks from, in order to be able to distance yourselves better this year than you have in years past. So maybe that's something that we can be intentional about when we're advertising the event. So, but we've got a little bit of time to think on that. So put that in the back of your mind, just to be stewing on that. So the things that I need your help on as we go forward in the next couple weeks are trails and treats. If I say, hey, just thumbs up or thumbs down how you're feeling on that. And I also appreciate all of your support volunteering to work the booth as you have in years past. I really appreciate that, and I'll be sending out a schedule on that. Also need your thumbs up, thumbs down on Christmas parade as we get closer to that. If you feel like that as long as we put these parameters in place and we can work together, like I said, as a team, and everybody pull their duties and the fireworks. As long as we have parking and a couple different options, I think we can explain to the public what we need from them in order for it to happen. And I think people are hungry for things to do. I think people are hungry to get out. And as we've talked about, I think there's physical health, I think there's mental health, and I think there's emotional health. And I think as a community, that's something that if we, as I said, are intentional about the way that we walk through things with people and we explain the way things can safely happen, I think we can meet people where they are, and they're happy to meet us with those expectations as well. So that's my 2 cents on that. So.
Well, the 3 that you asked for, I'll have to say, are probably the ones that I've heard the most about, that people are excited about. The trails and treats, they were tickled to death because I think a lot of people had assumed that it would be canceled this year, and when they heard that we were going to work it out safely, they're very excited and looking forward to it. Christmas parade, of course, always something they look forward to, the people, I think, and people not just in Troutman, but all over it. And the fireworks have really garnered, when we mentioned it initially, a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. So, from my perspective, I would like to see you move forward. Obviously, the others can speak for themselves, but for me, I'll just say I'd like to see you move forward on those. You seem to have plans in place to do what's necessary to keep it safe, and if the worst does happen, what to do in that case. If there's a resurgence, which some of us have read about in the news media lately, come cold weather, then we'll react accordingly. But nothing's just with granted. But me personally, I would like to see you continue as you have described with all 3 of those events at this time.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I'd like to say that I agree too, and I was just looking at all the thought y'all put into spreading everybody out with the vendors, and then taking it back on East Way and having a route so that nobody gets gathered together, that we can keep them moving around. I thought it was pretty ingenious thought of how to do that, and like I say, now others are looking at it because they've had all canceling out, and people, like you say, people really need to see something different. When I mentioned to people, they've been pretty excited about we're going to keep the trick or treat, the trails and treats thing out, and I think Sarah had mentioned that they already looked at getting their booth or something lined up. And when I told her, I think she'd contacted their church, and they were all excited about doing something. So I think, like I say, last minute we may find out we can't do something, but I think at some point we got to go forward. Just like I told Tina, the same thing is that the National Night Out to me was always an important thing, and she couldn't do like she always did, but at least she was able to manage it to be something to get people, recognize the police in the community. I think is a valuable tool, just like this is with the town. And same with the Christmas parade. I'm like, I don't understand why we can't. We just got to maybe do some advertising with people when they come there, remind them different signs out, something, social distancing and wearing masks, and
That's right.
That's just something we have to do.
And as we stage, taking ownership of how we're staging the folks in the parking lot. But I spoke with Chuck before we came in today, and like I said, he wanted to be here with us today, but he couldn't. But he was talking about how it won't be a problem, that we can spread as much as we need to. So the congregation of everyone who's waiting to take off, we can handle that differently.
If I remember, of the times I've seen, is that the biggest part of congregation is like at the depot, but there's more, not social distance, around that area, in that parking lot there. Down through here, it's like families of sitting there with their chairs, and they're spread pretty well down through there.
Yeah.
That's what I remember from.
Yep. So maybe we rope off the areas that are where people normally gather. So maybe we, or like you said, signs, and just communicate to people to spread out. So.
And then, like I said, the fireworks, the same thing. There's several places you could actually, you can make it. I don't know, in this park out here, if you could see them. I don't know
We've looked into it. We're too close to ESC.
I mean, can you see the fireworks?
Oh, see the fireworks.
If you were sitting there, look at
the trees. No.
The trees are too much.
Yeah.
Like I said, there is several places they could do that. Maybe help out.
Yep. But.
But I thumbs up on all of those. I think you're doing the right things.
Okay. Thank you.
We may get backed up later.
When you were talking about trails and treats, do you have an approximate amount of businesses that are gonna participate this year, or are you still in the process?
So far, people will sign up till the day before. So
Okay.
vendors and businesses will call it till the day before. So far, we've got 37, which last year we had 47, so we're really not far off from what we've been in the past. I spoke with Mike Todd today, and he said that he was somewhere over the weekend, I forget where he told me he was, but someone said, asked him where he was from, and he said he was from Troutman, and he said, oh, I live in Charlotte, and they said, aren't you from that town they're doing their Halloween thing? And he said, I'm bringing my children up because nowhere around me's. And I said, oh my gosh.
Oh, my gosh.
He said, nowhere around me's doing anything for Halloween, so we're planning to come up. We're so excited. So I don't know if that's good or not, but.
You maybe said it in your email, I don't recall. How far apart do you plan on keeping the businesses?
As far as we can, once we figure out what our main final number really basically is going to be, minus a few final stragglers that come in at the end, we're going to spread out. We're, of course, going to try to get them on flat grass, but then we'll just take that and spread as far as we can within a reasonable number, because we don't want to have to go so far that we're juggling folks trying to get in, come in the back way. So a manageable distance, but as far as we can go. So we're not going to limit ourselves, because if we can, further we can spread, the more fluid the line will be.
Okay.
So I don't have
I just wonder because, you know, there's some groups that come large, and then there's some that just come 2 or 3 in a family.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was just
When we
wondering.
measured how many we could fit out there, we measured between 40 feet between each vendor spot.
Okay.
So,
Since we're on town events, you maybe purposely didn't answer this, but you didn't mention anything about the tree lighting.
oh, no, I didn't. The tree lighting. So I completely forgot that one. I didn't even have it on the list. We talked about, do y'all remember when we talked about purchasing the tree, we talked about putting it up here and then doing it differently this year, counting down and lighting the whole town at once. So we're trying to coordinate the lighting of the garland and the tree and everything all at once. So we're pretty excited. We're trying to figure out how we're going to nail that this year. We're excited about it all coming together. I don't know how, if the numbers stay what they are now, I don't know how we would be able to do that and do it appropriately with the governor's restrictions. So that one could be done pretty well virtually, right? So watching the tree come on, Santa could be standing there with the mayor, and council could be there, and we're wishing you a Merry Christmas from the town of Troutman. We're here to light the town, and so that one we could nail pretty well virtually. And people could even come out on their front porches if they live nearby and see the town light up. So that one. But no, I didn't skip it on purpose. But I think we could coordinate a nice video and watch the town get lit, and that go on YouTube. And I think we could just have to get our pictures made with Santa in 2021.
Okay.
But,
And I don't think this one will have too much to deal mostly with you, maybe more with Tina. Last March, the Dixie horse auction was canceled, and they're planning on coming in the 11/26 through 28. I was in contact with Bobby Beachy the 1st of September, and he's planning on coming down for it. So I let him know that the Kiwanis isn't the people he needs to talk to. He needs to be talking to the county government. So I don't know. I haven't been back in touch with him, so I don't know what it is. But I know we always provide security.
And he's not contacted me. I'm completely unaware of that.
Well, have it on your radar.
What did you say? November?
It's Thanksgiving weekend.
Thanksgiving weekend. Okay.
Actually, they start coming in with things on the Wednesday before, and then they have a little obstacle course thing on Thanksgiving night, and then they auction Friday the articles, items, whatever people bring, and they do the first 200 horses that night, and then Saturday it's all day to midnight auctioning horses.
Will they be able to do it with the executive order may change between now and November, but.
Well, my understanding, and I could be wrong, I didn't actually read when T. Ross sent out the executive order, but I did read a little excerpt from somewhere that it's, where it was dealing with the schools, that the 6 feet distance is still recommended, but from what I understand, you don't have to social distance. They're still wanting you to do it, but it's not a mandate. Yes,
Would that not still fall under?
but I know the outdoor things, they can only do 7% of it.
Yeah, reminds me too, I'm going back to March, Councilman Williams. Councilman Bryant asked Chief Fleming back in March, and it got canceled, for a plan for traffic, parking, and personal safety with people crossing the street from where Dollar General is now
Right.
to the fairgrounds. So I'd like to see our chief come up with a plan for our November meeting on how she's gonna control parking, traffic, and pedestrian safety, because this is what was asked of our chief back in March.
And I imagine, I'm glad you remembered that, Eddie. Parking probably will be even more intense since the Dollar General is there now.
Because I think back last November, and this is why Councilman Bryant, I personally feel as a town, okay, enforcing the parking, the traffic, and the pedestrian safety, we failed. So I think we need to have a plan.
Brian, can you get with the chief on that and see that that's presented to us? Preferably, if you could get it to us a little bit before next meeting, so we can look at it and, you know, have our comments and feelings expressed by the time we meet some of the plan that has been described here, you know, for the protection of pedestrians and safety of the town and aesthetics of the town, if nothing else. And I say aesthetics from, you know, dirt and mud and so forth, but also accumulation that can be dangerous to the drivers. If we could have a plan put together, presented to us in time for.
Yes, sir. And is it possible to coordinate with the county on the parking arrangements too? Is there?
Well, in fact, yes, I mean, and again, you know, that'd be part of your plan that you would present. And of course, coordinate it and make sure it's okay with the county as opposed to a wish list, that it's something that, you know, this is what we're proposing, we've talked to the county, they've agreed to, you know, this, that, and the other, and let us, you know, as a council look at it and you know, feel comfortable with it or not feel comfortable, and you know, we express our feelings one way or the other.
Yeah, and as you recall, the revising of some of the town facility use applications that Ms. Watson had done, I think the last meeting or the meeting before, I think does provide us an opportunity to coordinate a little bit better with the folks that are sponsoring the event. And so I just want to make sure that it's not only, you know, definitely we're going to be doing our part with it, but I want to make sure that everybody else is aware of what we're proposing to do as far as parking changes or anything like that. So let's come up with a complete solution to the problem.
Brian, any type of other resources that we could get from the county to assist us regarding this matter would probably greatly appreciated.
I agree.
But our standard number of officers on duties too, correct? So we would need multiple other officers, whether they're from our own resources or other divisions, to come in and help us. And I think that discussions on that have to start with the principals that and drive the Dixie horse auction and are planning to come to Troutman. Somebody needs to be talking with them.
Typically, in an event like
I
that,
can't hear you, I'm sorry.
typically with an event like that, the officers that are assigned to be working the shift that day don't work the event, because they have to stay available for calls. So it would depend on our part-time officers and officers that are already off to work those events.
Right, so we still have coverage in the rest of the town.
Yes, sir.
And if it calls for 2, 5, 20 additional officers, then we have to find them.
Yeah.
This will all be discussed in the plan that's presented in coordination with the county. And I'm also thinking, in terms of parking, we can extend that same idea, if you will, for the fireworks, January 1st or New Year fireworks that Emily mentioned a while ago. Since that was brought up as a concern for making sure that people had adequate place to park and enjoy the fireworks without being too close to each other, maintain safe distances.
Just one other comment, since you brought it up, thank you. In addition to plans on where to park, the plan needs to include how we're going to police illegal parking. As, in the past, this is new to you, Brian, we'll find horse trailers and cars and pickup trucks all up and down the greenway, parked illegally. How do we prevent that from happening, or how do we remove those vehicles if they're illegal, if that's part of the plan? Towing may or may not be.
With
I'm
no
not
parking
suggesting-
signs visibly up,
That's
that were
right.
not enforced.
It needs to be enforced, which means more people.
I can't give you a number. But I know, and I can state for a fact, since the North Greenway has been up in the fencing, there's no horse trailers that park on the Greenway.
Good.
No horses, no horse trailers. They might back in and pull in that little gravel area, but they do not park on the Greenway.
Good to hear. If they do, we need a plan to get rid of it.
Yes, sir, Jeff.
Just going back about 4 years ago to what started back then with the Kiwanis being involved, they actually assisted Dean Beachy, who was the one that did that back then. But he, of course, was murdered a couple years ago, so his sons got involved, and they were unaware last year with the permit process that the town requires. So that's what created part of the issue with the town not realizing what was expected of them. They didn't understand what was expected. So the sons that are now running it didn't know what all Dad had to do. The Kiwanis no longer being in charge of the fairgrounds going forward, that dynamic's a little bit different. We have a new police chief who hasn't handled that in the past. That's also a little bit different dynamic. So you've got a whole bunch of different people trying to make a successful event that really don't know who all did exactly what in years past. It used to be that the sheriff's office handled all the security at that facility, and all they did was make sure nothing was stolen, basically, and it was a security measure. And Troutman showed up and said, this is in the city limits, we will handle all the security in the facility, and like the chief accurately said, it's off-duty officers, and they would have one doing it at certain times, and then two at certain other times. As Sally said, certain events during that is busier than others, so the people that put on the events, they're the ones that are responsible for all the resources, and that's where it takes into the new VAMP form that the town has come up with to schedule and basically say who's going to be responsible for what, and proper communications from them going forward on where vehicles can be parked and not parked will be paramount, and so that the neighbors are not offended and so that the town is not offended. This is one of the 3 largest sales in the southeastern United States, so the economic impact that goes to our businesses here as well as Iredell County as a whole, it's a win-win for everyone involved, and it's really paramount that everybody try to coordinate and make effective communications that it does work. Councilman Bryant and I talked last year when as he correctly said, even though they're not parked specifically on the greenways, there was horse remnants left when they left, that town staff did wind up having to go and clean and pick up, and those are some of the things, that discussions that need to happen also that's in that is those parts that wouldn't have been left had they not been here, and that's one of the discussions that needs to happen, that they also come back and who's going to pick up all the debris. What we started doing 4 years ago is, yes, the town does have no parking signs up there, but one time they come, then there's appropriate time, had been, that we went and we put black bags over all the no parking signs just for that special event so that they could park there. But this past March, nobody did that, so they was parking right up next to a no parking sign, which makes us look amateurish that we're not enforcing that, but they was just doing what they had been doing for years past. So everybody is talking and saying the right things, but just the county absolutely has had no labor and or plan in the past that they offer anything going forward. Not saying that they wouldn't this time, but in the past, they don't do anything except here's how much it is for you to rent the facility from the Kiwanis, and that's all they've had. So going forward, they basically will be in the place of Kiwanis saying this is how much it is to rent the facility, and then Bobby Beachy, that you have spoke to, who's now the one in charge of the Beachy Brothers, would need to fill out the application that, or the permit that Troutman has, and then coordinate with us going forward.
And that would be, and I hear what Doug's saying, and he's certainly right, and I think coordination, communication and coordination seems to be the key here. You know, with all interested in appropriate parties, you know, county as well as Mr. Beachy and, or both brothers, whatever, you know, the people that need to be contacted, call in on this discussion as part of this plan. So if they're aware of it, they can comment, they can add, subtract from it, you know, see what the town is involved in, and make sure that, again, you know, parking is done in an appropriate way, that things are cleaned up afterwards. You know, big thing was with the mud on the Old Murdoch Road up here. Make sure they understand that they're responsible for cleaning it up. They don't just leave, you know, maybe they didn't do it personally, but, you know, it's part of their show, customers. They did it, and they need to clean it up, make sure it's done, and so forth. They have to hire, you know, contractors, what have you. But again, I would say, you know, all appropriate parties involved in this, and this year adding the county in, be contacted as a part of this, you know, plan that you formulate, and have it with by November's meeting.
Can someone remind me what the date of this is?
It's Thanksgiving week. They start
Yeah,
showing up
it'll
the
start
first
on the
of April.
25th, bringing items in to the fairgrounds, but the actual sale doesn't start until Thanksgiving Day, the 26th. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Mr. Hinkle, too, one of the things we discussed back in March, and I remember vividly, is pedestrian safety. It's paramount.
Right.
That I've really never seen safety officers crossing people, whether or not it's on Old Murdoch Road, or whether it's from Old Mountain Road to the fairground. We need to have some type of organized pedestrian safety out there for these people. It's dark. No, they're not wearing traffic vests or cones on their head, or, you know. So we need to safely and organized get these people across.
I remember your discussion, and pedestrians were at the top of your list of important, you know, something.
Because unfortunately, if someone gets hit, it's going to be front page of, you know.
Understand, and God forbid, you know, that happen. Brian, you hearing? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, and then our overall goal is for them to have as successful an event as they can have in a way that doesn't have irreparable impact on the town.
I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. White was saying. Typically, the officers that were hired to work the event were to work the security inside the event, not for the any traffic or pedestrian control. There is pedestrian control devices as far as the crosswalk at the red light. So there is something in place at the time, always has been. So, but you know, we can look at it to see if we can make it a little more clear to the pedestrians if that's where they need to cross, not to be crossed or not there, where there is no lights, and it'd be difficult for individuals to see them for their own safety.
You do have situations there right in front of the entrance to the fairgrounds there between Highway 21 that is very dangerous. You know, you have people, as well as young people, darting out with kids and so forth. I understand there at Old Murdoch Road, you know, you have the traffic signals and so forth, but certainly there at the entrance, main entrance, yes, something to formulate to make people aware that,
Yes,
you know, you
and
cross,
we
you
can
know,
work on that. Yes, sir.
again, part of the plan. Again, include, you know, get the brothers involved, and the county, of course, and so that this is all coordinated, everybody knows, you know, what's gonna happen come Thanksgiving Day or the day before.
And Ms. Williams, I just want to say thank you for bringing this to my attention.
Certainly.
November's going to be here in no time, and I had, to be honest with you, I hadn't even thought about it, and they haven't contacted me. Have they contacted you, Emily, in reference to it?
No.
So, you know,
They might still be in
and with the
talks
executive order, you know, our mind is no mass gatherings, more than 50 people, you know, so we're still kind of in that mindset and workload of events going on. So, you know, it never even crossed my mind that it would be coming to town, so thank you for bringing it to my attention.
And again, in discussions with them, whether they're able to come here and meet you in person, between now and early November, when you formulate the plan, but a Zoom meeting of some sort, virtual meeting, something, of course, obviously the county's much closer, a little easier to meet with them, but, if they're at a distance, a virtual meeting or something, but, certainly that they are an integral part of formulating this plan.
It's an event also where Iredell County, not the town of Troutman, is making money, okay? So I think they need to share, okay, responsibility regarding this matter, not Troutman and our citizens taking the blunt of the responsibility of having to pay for all this.
Just so you all know, Brian and I spoke last Monday, the Beachies have inquired with the county because of the governor's order. They still don't know, and the county still has not given approval that this event can even happen. So as Brian and I spoke last week, it's just, at this point, the county has not signed off that it can happen. And as of today, there's still discussions with the state to see if agriculture events are exempt, and the health department director is okay with the event. So they're still waiting on the facility to be okay first, and then once they get that okay, then they're coming to Troutman, which is the next logical step to get that paperwork finished, just so you all know.
Is there any reason we couldn't be proactive and just reach out to the Breachies from Town Hall and just let them know we're standing by and waiting to hear from them and to help them move forward with the plan?
Yeah, I think we can do that. That sounds appropriate.
I see no problem with that. I mean, even though, and I hear what Doug's saying, but, in the event, at least they've gotten that far, that they've gotten the initial contact made, and as soon as the county approves, if they do, then they can go to step two and we'll formulate the details. The devil's in the details, and that's what we need to get to eventually, so.
Most likely we'll wind up with this event eventually, even if it's next March or April of 2021. So our planning that we do now is going to benefit us
whether it's November or March or June.
Whenever it happens.
Yeah,
So any type of planning is going to help us next year.
Well, they are at the point, wherever the event is held in Thanksgiving is where it's going to be permanently. They're not going to move back and forth. So if it's here, they'd like to remain here forever, but if it's not, wherever they go is where they're going to be.
Any other comments? We'll move on then with item D. And I'm sorry, item C. Overview of the upcoming regular meetings this Thursday. And discussion of the agenda, and I'll turn it over to our town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Hinkle. So the agenda for this meeting is relatively light, but there's a couple of pretty important items on there. As you can see in the consent agenda, in addition to approval of regular and closed session minutes, we have approval of resolution recognizing Officer Jones, who is retiring. He'll be recognized later in the meeting, but the actual resolution, the actual formal resolution is addressed here in the consent agenda. Item number 6 deals with an agreement with the Central Iowa Council of Governments for some board adjustment training that had been previously arranged to take place between May and September of 20. Obviously with COVID, that's set everyone back quite a bit. However, in speaking with COG, they'd still like to continue the contract. It's of no cost to the town, and they would be looking to extend that through the end of the fiscal year 21. So attached for your review is the extension for that COG Board of Adjustment training. And if you like with any agenda item, consent agenda item, you are more than welcome to discuss that in greater detail elsewhere in the agenda if you want. That seemed like a fairly simple operation, so that's why we put it there. Item number 7 kind of fits into that category, like I discussed. That you know, if you need more information on it, or if you want to discuss it in greater detail, we can certainly move that to the regular agenda. You know, if you prefer. But going back in time, there was an agreement between the town of Troutman and the previous property owner, where Kelvin Creek, the Kelvin Creek development is currently in process for the town to provide water and sewer. Moving forward a few years, Nest Communities, who's the developer for the property, has offered to install 3,000 feet of gravity sewer from Streamwood Road to the north side of Autumn Leaf Road. And they are also planning to extend approximately 2,500 linear foot of water main along Autumn Leaf Road. So the developer would assume the initial cost of the project, with essentially the town reimbursing the developer through the use of fees, availability fees the developer would apply towards each house. So the credits in effect would be what is used by the town to reimburse the developer for the total cost of providing the water and sewer. As I indicated in my notes, the original cost of the project was estimated to be $1.1 million at one point in time, but through Benji, Thomas, and West Engineering, taking another look at some of the soil issues, in particular a stream crossing, and what would be involved with that. They did manage to get the bids down to about $500,000 to $600,000, which I think is a little bit more beneficial, even though I say quote unquote only applying credits towards the project. You know, keep in mind at some point in time, if the developer were to use up all the credits, then they would be paying for credits to the town, cash money out of pocket after that. So at this point in time, it's certainly to the town's advantage that we were able to take and have the contractors take another look at the bids for this project. So to this point, Benji Thomas, West Consultants, and our town attorney have both reviewed the agreement, provided some edits, and the version you see here, I believe, is reflective of those edits. And Mr. Thomas is here, and I'm not sure if I was able, I might not have been able to cover everything. If you have any other comments you want to make on it.
I do not. I believe the council at the time the agreement voted on it.
I'm sorry?
The council at the time of the agreement, back whenever that was, voted on the agreement.
2006. Year 2006.
Okay. So,
And that's part of the agenda briefing under number 7.
yes.
Okay, the comments that you just made, do we have those somewhere here in this packet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I missed those, so.
Yeah, that's in
I
the,
was going-
that's kind of smaller, maybe smaller type font.
That's
'Cause
okay.
I wrote, and I think Kim had to shrink it down to get it into the,
It's good late night reading.
Yeah.
and then I think the agreement itself is, famous last words, fairly self-explanatory too, to take a look at. But if you have any, like I said, if you have any comments, questions, you want to discuss it more on Thursday evening, you certainly have the ability to do that. I've been told that some of you certainly have a history with it, and you know, from that standpoint, that it's a fairly easy process. But anytime I hear $1.1 million, I tend to want to make sure we've discussed it with you guys first before we moved it too far forward. So
I don't want to go into much detail, but I think it's important to remember that the Calvin Creek development would have had to build a lift station on their property in lieu of using the right-of-way, which the town agreed to for the old Falls Cove development that ran down to Streamwood. So they have avoided considerable expense by building a lift station on their own property versus using gravity feed down to Streamwood. So there's an offset right there to the $1.1 million, which is significant. And then, of course, the connection fees over time is, as we agreed some time ago, a good deal. But the way that they're approaching wastewater is the way that it was planned by the town when Falls Cove was initially conceived and approved by the town, that right of way down the hill. They were not aware of that when they bought the property, so that the elimination of the lift station requirement was a significant contributor towards this agreement that you've outlined and that we've worked on from a legal standpoint. Thank you for taking that to fruition.
So any other questions or comments about that? Moving down the agenda, we have under presentations and recognitions, we have 3 items. The first of which is recognition of the service retirement for Officer Russell or Rusty Wade Jones of the Troutman Police Department. Chief Fleming, if you have anything more substantial to say about that, I believe Mr. Officer Jones is currently planning on attending that evening. Item number 9 is recognition of the Fraternal Order of Police for the splash pad sponsorship. Ms. Watson, I don't know if you have anything more to comment about that.
Don't.
And then finally, proclamation 3-20, October 11th through 17th, this is Emergency Nurses Week. So I think that is fairly self-explanatory. I believe one of the council members had brought that to us at one point in time. And then for new business, we have one appointment for a 2-year term for the in-town alternate for Board of Adjustment, and then another in-town member, 3-year term for Design Review Board. The town clerk have anything updated or anything different to say about that?
I know that y'all normally want each board to bring a nomination, but these boards have not met since I've received these applications, and I thought maybe with COVID and everything, you know, instead of bringing them to so many meetings, y'all might want to go ahead and make those appointments and fill those positions. We only have one application in, and it's very seldom we get applications these days. So I went ahead and put it on the agenda, but it's up to you. They are planning to be here, so.
I was going to ask you if they could be here.
Yes, sir.
The only question I have or comment is Mr. Zittle. Guessing that's how you pronounce his last name. His first choice was the Parks and Rec,
Right.
and then his second was Design Review. And so you put him in here because of the appointment for Design Review.
Right, and there was no positions on Parks and Rec at this time. So I asked him, and he said yes.
And he said he would, okay. That was my question.
So that's all I have as far as the agenda, the regular agenda is concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Hooper, for covering for me for a moment. I had a work issue, working through. I want to come back on a couple of things, and I want to try to fix the concerns that might be had at the fairground. So I won't come back to that. Couple of things is. I want to bring up, while we're talking about the agenda, Kim and I were discussing, on our agenda, we have neglected the ABC board, library, fire department, because of the number of occupancy in this room. I wanted to know if the council is agreeable, we can start inviting those folks back, depending on the agenda for Thursday nights, to give us an update at starting next month. Anybody have an issue with getting those updates?
I know, no reason not, I think that's a good idea, but we're still required to do 25, so that's correct.
That's correct. So we'll still manage that in and out the kind of process that we use. But I don't want them to come in with, you know, a couple of sheets of updates for us, when they start to come back in, so we can start to rotate them in, it'd be great. I think you all talked about phase 3 and, you know, we're beyond the phase 3, there's still some restrictions there, and so we need to continue to abide by those.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, we didn't get too far into the weeds on that, other than maybe mentioning it. But yeah, as you mentioned, and as mentioned in my email, and I did prepare some information that I think we could use for public announcement purposes. But as you're aware, we did open the town hall for phase 3 traffic. The distancing and face covering requirements are still in place. The lobby is marked for distancing using the same markings that Steve and his team had put out there earlier for meetings. I think they're still applicable for people using the customer service window. The council room is still subject to mass gathering limits of 25 people, as you guys just mentioned. There's nothing different in that's changed from phase 2 to phase 3. That's being still pretty much held standard. In terms of the offices, what we're looking to do is allow, in some cases, staff to hold small meetings in their office space at their discretion, provided that face coverings are worn by visitors and staff when those take place. Having said that, if there's any way that staff could possibly hold those meetings in this space, in the council room, if the council room is available, just for safety concerns, that's kind of something that I personally would be leaning a little bit more towards. Again, providing that the council room is available. But today was the first day that we kind of had a soft opening, if you will, as far as allowing people to use the front door. Mr. Shealy and I were talking about it earlier. There's a little bit more foot traffic maybe than, for whatever reason, we anticipated, but nothing unmanageable. Folks were very courteous and friendly. I think everybody that I saw was wearing a face covering when they came inside. I think in the future, if someone is not able to wear a face covering, we would encourage people, and this I think is going to come out in the announcement, we would encourage people that if they're not comfortable or if they are unable to wear a face covering, that they continue to use the drive-through window or some other means to conduct business if possible. But we want to make sure that everybody has accessibility to the town hall and our facilities and to staff, and that we continue to provide the same service that we were providing before as much as possible given the COVID restrictions. And I'm optimistic that we can move forward. I think staff, in discussing it this morning also, you know, granted there's going to be some concerns with how it's done moving forward, but I think we're optimistic that we can continue to provide excellent service to folks even during the current COVID situation. So, and if anybody has any questions, feel free, or any concerns about it in the future, feel free to give me a call or stop by, and we can. We're all kind of trying to get through this the best way we can, and we're going to do our best. So that's all I would say about the COVID reopening.
I realize that you're now town manager, but our former interim town manager had sent out plans, you know, phase 1, 2, 3, and so forth. I don't know if you had seen a copy of that or not. Not that we have to obviously continue to follow that, but as just a point of reference, you might, if you haven't, get Tim to find a copy of that and just look at it.
We've had that. We've continued to follow those plans, and that's I think where the basis for this reopening came about, was to continue your intention as town council to kind of reopen the building once we hit phase 3. And so, yeah, we're continuing to follow those, and yeah, if there is a piece that needs to be put out in the public, we'll put, like I said before, I've got some information I think that's reader friendly that we'll be able to put out. We can certainly incorporate as much as Mr. Freeman was able to put together as possible. So, thanks.
Move on down to the next item then, item D. I hold a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute him.
Yeah, that's fine.
And, anyone else?
So moved.
Motion's on the floor, is there a second? Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The opposition, and none, motion passes.